Hi, Flimsy Lunch Tray here, and today we're going to be doing an upgrade and commander build of the Tier 10 British light cruiser, the HMS Minotaur, which honestly is one of my favorite British ships. The Minotaur and Colsic, HMS Colsic, are really close for the tie. So let's just talk about the Minotaur. So we're going to look at, well, first we need to say one thing in the beginning, and that is, what type of light cruiser are we dealing with? I kind of like to talk about looking at a ship and its roles and functions just briefly real quick before kind of diving more into the ship. Minotaur is a mid to close range cruiser, and that is also as a result of her main battery firing range, 15.8, if you don't take the extended range. And to really be punished to the enemy, you often will find yourself getting close within, that. For myself, at least so far, I've been the 13 to 10 kilometer range. I like to try to go beyond that 15.8, not just sit at the range, so if the enemy ship does decide to kite away, get closer, and then I can fire on them for longer. Because I have a concealment build on the Minotaur, so actually this will drop down to 9.1 if I throw a camouflage on. But yeah, so she's really excels at mid to close range fighting, but you have to be mindful of what targets you are going up against because of the infamous British light cruiser citadels. So if you show too much side, you're done. Because of how the citadel, it raises up through here. So if I get rid of because you can kind of see here. Let's get rid of this. Yeah, there we go. Gives you better an idea. That you can be really vulnerable since the citadel, it's already above water, but then in the midsection, basically between the first rear turret and then almost the conning tower, or somewhere like here, that citadel comes even higher. So you really have to pay attention to your angling a lot in Minotaur. Otherwise, you'll get punished, especially with this 16 millimeter plating, even the deck. So, CVs, dive bombers can really do a lot of damage to you. So, because the ship's so good, she has to compromise somewhere, and armor is one of those things that is a bit of a weakness on the Minotaur. But everything else more than makes up for it. So let's talk about modules. So you get, when you research and purchase the Minotaur, you come fully upgraded. It's got all things to go, so you won't have to invest any more beyond that. Let's go ahead and start talking about upgrades. So, upgrades. So, the first slot I would recommend you getting is the main armaments modification 1, because it reduces the risk of your main battery and your risk of torpedo tubes from becoming incapacitated by negative 20%. And trust me, you really want to keep the DPM up with the main battery, as well as keeping those all those torpedoes, because you get 16 torpedoes, 8 on each side. And so you really want to be able to keep those two in action. So this skill also improves the main battery and torpedo tube survivability by plus 50%. And then your main battery repair time and your torpedo tube repair time, if they should become incapacitated, is reduced by negative 20%. So both armaments are back up on sooner rather than later. You also have secondary or auxiliary armaments modification 1. Improves your secondary and your AA. I'm trying to remember what the range is on the... Well, it doesn't appear like you don't actually get secondaries on Minotaur. Scratch that. Really, is that true? Yeah. What do you know? I don't know why I didn't realize that till now. But you don't get secondaries on Minotaur. So if this main auxiliary armaments is just really for your AA, if you would take it. And you don't need magazine modification, which what this does is it reduces the risk of your ship's magazine from detonating. As I always highlight, You get Juliet Charlie combat signals, which completely eliminates the risk of your ship's magazine detonating. So if you're going into randoms, clan, ranked, you should always be looking to take the Juliet Charlie combat signal. For slot 2, you have 3 options. The third option is not here, but I'll show you towards the end of the upgrade section. But the first right now, as you see, I've mounted is the damage control system modification 1. And what this does is it reduces the risk of fire and flooding, risk of catching fire reduced by -5%, and the risk of flooding reduced by -3%. Other option you have is engine room protection. Thus far, I haven't really found myself having my engines knocked out. Usually in the Minotaur, if you're exposed and your engine gets knocked out, that means good things are probably not going to happen to you because of just how that armor scheme. So for now, I have this, but there's actually a third option I'll show you here momentarily that I recommend taking, which would be the hydroacoustic search modification you can get in the armory. But we'll talk about that in a moment. I want to save it. Then you get 4 options for slot 3. You get the main battery modification 2, your main battery traverse speed plus 15%, but your main battery traverse speed is already ridiculous. It's 180-degree turn time of 5.4 seconds, so you really don't need that skill. You have an AA guns modification, so reduces the priority AA sector of your preparation time, so that's good because Minotaur does actually have really good AA. It's 6.9 kilometer for the firing range of the AA. You have aiming systems modification 1, which is typically what I like to take on my light cruisers, British light cruisers, because what it does is that it increases the firing accuracy of your main battery. Secondary battery doesn't apply to Minotaur. Accelerates the traverse speed of the torpedo tubes, and also would extend the firing range of the secondary battery. Again, don't have that for Minotaur. But that maximum dispersion of your main battery shells is reduced by -7%. So that means that you're getting tighter groups with your main battery. And when your main battery reloads every 2.8 seconds, I'm not taking adrenaline rush into account, then yeah, I want to have as tight as groups as possible. And also the torpedo tube's traverse speed is nice if you find yourself in a sticky situation and you get your torpedoes on target. You also have torpedo tubes modification 1. What it does is that it improves the efficiency of the torpedoes in torpedo tubes, so your torpedo speed increases by +5 knots. Right now my torpedoes are 62 knots. And the traverse speed is also, the traverse speed is also increased by +20%, and the risk of your torpedoes from becoming incapacitated is -40%. For myself, I like to invest in the guns versus the torpedoes when it comes to Minotaur. Again, because you're getting such a ridiculous damage per minute with a 2.8 second reload for all your main battery turrets, of course. So to me, it's just, that's really what, for myself, I would recommend you investing in on slot 3. Slot 4, you get 2 options, damage control system modification 2. What this does is that it accelerates the fire extinguishing time and recovery time from flooding if you either of those 2 should happen to you by -15%. But the bread and butter is in the steering gears modification 1. So your rudder shift time is reduced by -20%. You may be familiar, perhaps you're watching this and say, hey, why isn't there propulsion modification? You'll find those on the American cruisers. The propulsion that's already built in with the British light cruisers is already really good. But as many of you know, they have a very hard time of slowing down, coming to a complete stop quickly. But with your rudder shift time of being -20%, my maneuverability right now is the rudder shift time is 8.3 seconds. So that's really good. And anything you can kind of do to help boost the maneuverability of the Minotaur is really helpful because of, again, we were talking about the armor layout. And you can just see how vulnerable the ship is. I mean, you can take citadels from the side, you take citadels from the front, and through the deck. So it's just really important to try anything you can do to help avoid incoming fire from battleships, because battleships really like firing at Minotaur, and cruisers as well, because your armor is so weak. It's very satisfying to get for you in a battleship to dev strike a Minotaur. So that's kind of why you would really want to invest in your steering gears. At least that's so in my mind. For slot 5, you have 5 options. Only listed here are 4, and we're going to look at the 5th option as well as the 3rd option for slot 2. You have torpedo lookout system. There's a lot better skills to invest in, like concealment system modification 1. Like I said, my concealment, if the camouflage, would be 9.1. So I can just throw camouflage on real quick. 9.1 when you take a camouflage. So I go for the concealment build Minotaur. And so this reduces your detectability range by sea, air, and squadron detectability by -10%. But also it increases dispersion of enemies firing at your ship by +5%. So that means their dispersion is not going to be as tight when they're shooting at your ship. You also have steering gears modification 2. You can build this into a non-concealment Minotaur build, which I will get into that in a moment. But I just want to go through these for the time being. I'll circle back around. And then you have ship consumable modification 1, so increases action time of all the ship's consumables. Action time of the ship consumables is increased by +10%. Really, the only 2 options that are best here, I would say, is the concealment system modification 1, which is the standard Minotaur route, or steering gears modification 2. And I'm going to revisit this, just hang with me for a moment. There's a lot of things we have to talk about with Minotaur. So what's the slot 5 option? Well, if you have 5 or more tier 10 ships, or you already have access to the research bureau, if you get 5 tier 10 ships, you get automatic access to the research bureau, unless you did like a dockyard event and you got some research bureau points before you actually reached 5 tier 10 ships. And that is an armory, and you're going to see this icon for research bureau. And we go to upgrades, and then we're going to go to the Minotaur, so you can see all these tier 10 ships right here. So if we scroll down to Minotaur, if I pronounce this right, aerosol smoke curtain system. The upgrade is available on slot 5. It allows the ship to maneuver in smoke areas at low speeds. So what this does is, as a futurist, you're seeing a lot of things going on here, is that your detectability range by air is decreased by -5%. Now keep in mind for slot 5, like this would be giving up concealment expert or the concealment upgrade. So instead of having -10%, now you have -5%. And you also see by sea, instead of having -10% with concealment, you get -5% with this skill. And then the reload time of your ship consumables is decreased by -10%, and we can talk about kind of what all those things entail. And then the action time of the smoke generator is improved by a positive 150%. So your smoke's going to be lasting for even longer, but your smoke screen dispersion time is reduced by -15%. So your smoke's not going to stay up for quite as long. I think right now it's like 110 seconds or something like that, but we'll look. So what does this mean? So if you don't take the concealment upgrade for slot 5, it means instead of your air detectability range being 6.9, which matches your AA, which is really nice, you're going to be increased to 7.28 kilometers for detectability range by air. And then you have the reload time to your ship consumables by -10%. I already have some commander skills that already help improve that. But for example, let's see, like your hydro, instead of it coming back on in 120 seconds, it's going to come back online in 108 seconds. And instead of your smoke screen coming back online in 160 seconds, it's going to come back online in 144 seconds. That kind of goes along with the smoke screen dispersion time being reduced as well. So that's good that they kept that in mind in tying these skills together. But this action time of the smoke generator consumable by plus 150%. Stock, the Minotaur has 15-second action time of the smoke generator. when one of the skills I've taken from my commander improves it by 10%, so then that bumped it up to 16.5 seconds. But then if you were to take this upgrade, you go from 16.5 seconds to 37.5 seconds. So even longer than the American destroyers, or like, you know, something like the Goering with like the 30 seconds of smokescreen dispersion time. I think Friesland has like 32 or something like that, but you get 37.5. So it kind of goes along with that aerosol smoke curtain system. You can put up a really long smokescreen with this skill. What it does take is it takes research points, 19,200. You can see I only have 600 at this point in time. You get these by through the combat missions. You get 400. And then the main way of getting these is through resetting a ship line. So if you reach a tier 10 ship and then you reset the line, you go all the way back to the beginning, but then you earn these research points along the way as you regrind that ship line. Or also dockyard, as I mentioned. So this is that fifth option. So this is intriguing. It's interesting. I'm still kind of early and new with the Minotaur, so I don't know if I'd actually take this for myself yet. It's going to be a long time before I get this because there's some other things I want to invest my research bureau points in. But if you have a lot of research bureau points for some reason lying around, you can consider taking this if you want to test it out. Now for slot 2, I was talking about a third option you could take over the damage control modification 1. Is hydroacoustic search modification 1. So this increases the action time of the hydroacoustic search and short range hydroacoustic search consumables. Action time of the consumable plus 20%. So what this does is that it would, with some of the commander skills I already have, the action time of my hydroacoustic search is going to go from 110 seconds to 132 seconds. So it means I'm going to be able to detect torpedoes for even longer, especially like right now with the smokescreen of the Minotaur. Let's look at that. So right now the smokescreen dispersion time is 113 seconds, and then right now it's 110 seconds. So it basically means once I smoke up, I slow down, wait 5 or 10 seconds, or 5 seconds even, and then pop my hydroacoustic search. The whole entire time that my smokescreen is active, my hydroacoustic search will be active, so that will help me see any enemy ships from 5 kilometers away and detects the torpedoes 3.5 kilometers away. So yeah, slot 6, main battery modification 3. As you can see, that's what I've decided to take, and that improves your main battery reload time by negative 12%. I don't remember what it is without this. I think it's like just maybe it's 3 or 3.1 seconds off the top of my head. But it also comes at the cost of your main battery traverse speed being reduced by negative 13%. And as I showed you, our main battery traverse speed is already 5.4 seconds, so that's really not a big deal. Again, I like to invest in the guns versus torpedoes because the Minotaur is really a savage to enemy cruisers, battleships, as well as destroyers, especially broadside cruisers and battleships. Minotaur will just completely eat you up. Goes for carriers as well. Gunfire control system modification 2. So this also will extend the main battery firing range by plus 16. So you'll go from, I'll look at that, 15.8. Go up my calculator here. 15.8. So it extends it an additional 2.52 kilometers. So if I add that in, then that means you're getting an 18.32 kilometer reach with your main battery. I don't know how much I necessarily recommend this, because even once you start reaching up to 15.8 kilometers, it takes some time for the shells to get there. I mean, it's nice having the range, naturally, for any ship, but you'll just have a harder time of landing your shells, landing your shots. So again, for me, I kind of like to focus on increasing my damage per minute any way that I can. You also have auxiliary armaments modification 2. So this improves the efficiency of the secondary battery, which doesn't exist on Minotaur, and your AA mounts. So basically this skill is just building into your AA. So you can have continuous AA damage, improved damage from AA shell explosions, and you also get 2 additional explosions produced by salvos from your AA defense. So if we look at AA, then I kind of pop that back up again to look at it side by side. Yeah, so you can see our continuous damage already is 414, damage by shell explosions, 1890. I mean, you could technically, if you want to, if you want to have an AA build, like I know there's some guys who like having gun builds, but I also like having an AA build. You could totally take the auxiliary armaments modification too. That could be an option. So far, I've been taking the traditional route with the Minotaur, which is investing mostly into the guns. Now, I want to talk about the type of builds you could have just from the upgrades alone with Minotaur. That also will factor in perhaps with the commander skills. So for the light cruisers, once you reach Edinburgh, tier 8 British light cruiser, you get the option of the smoke generator or the surveillance radar. Now, granted, if you guys remember, we were just looking at some skills that improve the action time of your consumable. And I already have a commander skill set up right now that helps improve the action time of consumables. And you can see right here that our radar, it wouldn't be 30 seconds, it'd be 44 seconds. And not only that, it's a 10 kilometer radar range. So that's quite nice, as you can just switch in between the two. But again, you can see right now I have the smoke generator set up. So let's talk about the 2 builds you can have. Well, you could say 3. So let's say what's nice if you take radar, as is right now, which means we're not going to get any smoke. And I have this concealment build. Okay, this is kind of the hybrid option-ish. And this is also known as the Minotaur, memeing with radar. Because my concealment is 9.1 kilometers, but my radar is 10 kilometers, that means I can stealth radar. But more importantly, it means as soon as I get detected by a surface ship, like say a destroyer, I pop this. That destroyer is immediately already 0.9 kilometers within my radar range, which means that it's going to be hard for him to disengage, perhaps hard for him to go dark. And I have this radar for 44 seconds, just with this current build already. So really a threat to destroyer players. It can catch a lot of people off guard. Most Minotaur players, as you saw, like myself, take smokescreen. I messed around a little bit with the radar build on Edinburgh. I tried it out. I don't remember if I tried it out for Neptune. But I'm just kind of still getting the hang of the ship, so I haven't tested the radar out yet. But if you were to take a radar, and we go back into the armory, there is a surveillance radar modification where we can boost the longevity of the radar, just like we could with the hydroacoustic search. So that's the surveillance radar modification where the action time of our consumable is increased by plus 20%. So if we went from that 44 seconds and we add or times 0.2, that means we get an additional 8.8 seconds. So 44 plus 8.8, my radar is going to now last for 52.8 seconds. That's pretty nice. And then if we look at the upgrades, like we saw for Minotaur, that was this reload time of the consumables. Means it's going to come back online quicker. You can already see that we are going to get pretty far if we took that type of build where we invested in a radar with slot 2, and as well as our taking the consumable of surveillance radar. So you can be pretty nasty to enemy ships, but what this means, traditionally when you take radar or Minotaur, you really need to have the maneuverability. So let's talk about this, and this kind of goes into the third build. So some players might just take simply this build, maybe with also surveillance radar modification 1 to get that longer lasting radar, but they might even take it a step further. And that is that you're just building basically into the maneuverability of your ship. Like I was talking about, where to go, where you don't even take concealment system modification 1. So you sacrifice more concealment, and then you would take steering gears modification 2. And so our rudder shift time is going to be reduced by -40%. So the rudder shift time is, right now, it's 8.3. So if I do some math, which means now your rudder shift time is going to go from 8.3 seconds to 4.98 seconds. So that means you're going to be very maneuverable. And that's actually going to even help you avoid taking more damage, because that's kind of the point. If you don't take Concealment System Expert and you go for this Steering Gears Modification 2, you're kind of, hey, I'm a ship that can't conceal and smoke. And because of that, let's invest in that further. You take Steering Gears Modification 2. Like, that's, to me, is just makes sense. So if I'm running a radar build on the Minotaur, then for myself, I mean, yeah, it's nice to do the stealth radar and trapping a destroyer within your radar range. But you could even take it a step up further with this Steering Gears Modification 2. Now, what this does mean is that it's going to negatively impact your concealment. So you're going to lose 10% off of your concealment. So I think that puts us over 10 kilometers. I don't really want to just buy the skill and then, well, I guess I could. But I have a hard time keeping money. I'm always buying ships all the time as I grind too quick. And now I'm just flying back up to 19 million. So your concealment, I think, is just over 10 kilometers. So that means if you do get detected, you'd have to wait like maybe a few seconds before you pop your radar to catch that ship within range. So I think it's like 10.1, 10.2, something. It's really close to that. So it's still really good as far as it goes for concealment system or just concealment in general for the Minotaur. One of the things that I do want to also make mention of, well, I can't say that yet. We got to talk about this anti-concealment build. Yeah, so you have that. I just want to make sure there's no other skills here or upgrades. It should just be that. Yeah. Yeah, so then you take Steering Gears Modification 2, take radar modification 1, and then maybe do some things with your commander to keep that type of build in mind. And I'm about to show you, commander. One thing to keep in mind if you just run the more traditional Minotaur build with your smoke generator, this is what I was wanting to say, is that your concealment, your smoke firing penalty is actually better than the Neptune. So I think the Neptune's like maybe it's almost 6 or something, or maybe it's not that high. But your concealment is 5.4 kilometers. So when a ship's closing in on you, and you're still firing in smoke, say there's a destroyer rushing you, a cruiser, you can keep firing up until that range, and then they'll just automatically going to detect you in the smoke. So that's always really important to keep in mind in the Minotaur. I had a battle last night where I had you're supposed to say Henry, tier 10, so French cruiser, yeah, rushing me, and I had to keep this in mind, because as he was rushing me, I stopped firing once he got like 5.6, 5.5 kilometers away. That was a really good battle, almost 3,000 base XP in a randoms match, so it's pretty fun. Okay, I've already talked way too long on all those things, and we haven't got to the commander yet, so I'll do my best to keep this short and concise as possible. For my recommendations for a 10-point build, this can vary, and we will circle back around to that, because I'm going to give you, I think, 2 or 3 different options as far as a commander build goes. I'd recommend first taking Last Stand, because you really need to keep your maneuverability intact. If your steering gear or your engine becomes incapacitated, Basically, you just you're penalized, but you can still move versus just being a dead duck in the water or stuck going in circles. So it's really important for Minotaur, again, because her armor is so weak, you can take a lot of damage. So you want to keep on the move. For a 3-point commander, I've chosen to take priority target because, again, for the armor purposes, anything I can do to heighten my awareness of what enemy ships may be taking a bearing on my ship or firing, the more I know, the better. So if I go from maybe 1 or 2 to like 4 or 5, then I mean, even at 3, I already know like I need to disengage or I need to smoke up. So that's what I recommend for a 3-point commander. For a 6-point commander, you could go 2 ways. You could take Adrenaline Rush first, or you could take Superintendent. I myself took Superintendent first because I wanted that additional smoke. I wanted that additional heal. That's something I didn't mention, is that the heal is super strong on the Minotaur. So HP per second, 866. If I compared it to something like Des Moines, as an example. The heal's 253 per second. That's a huge difference. So what this means is that you can heal back large chunks of damage in Minotaur compared to other ships. So she's got this super heal. So I would gladly like to take an additional super heal on top of either having the additional hydroacoustic search and the additional smoke or radar, depending on which of those 2 you take. For 10 points build, I recommend taking Concealment Expert. It reduces your ship's detected view range by a further negative 10%. As I said and stated, all said and done, right now I have a 9.1. That's the smallest concealment range you can get for the Minotaur. So that's my 10-point build. For a 13-point build, the next skill I recommend taking is the Adrenaline Rush. So I'll kind of build into, this is kind of follows the bread and butter build of a tier 10 destroyer, or just destroyers in general. But for 13 points, then I would recommend taking Adrenaline Rush. So once you begin to take damage, your main battery and your torpedoes are going to reload even faster, making you even more of a threat. But it also helps boost your continuous AA damage as well. And then for a 15-point commander, I would then recommend taking Consumables Enhancements. I hinted that I had this commander skill, and so this boosts the action time of Hydroacoustic Search, Surveillance Radar, and the Smoke Generator. So basically, at any point in time, we'll have 2 of the 4 active, or just 2 of the 3, since we don't have an engine boost with Minotaur. So whether we take Smoke or Surveillance Radar, we already get that additional plus 10% buff. Now, for a 17-point build, you can see I've gone with Fill the Tubes. So my torpedo tube reload time, I've decreased it. So my torpedo tube reload time right now is 86.4 seconds, which translates to 1 minute and 26 seconds. So without this, your reload time is, have to think, it's over 1.5 minutes, maybe like 100 seconds, perhaps, something like that. But because the torpedoes, there are 10-kilometer torpedoes and they're 62 knots, you get 8 on each side, so they're like 2 racks. So let me just show you where those torpedoes are at. So you can see they're both right here in this midsection. And what's nice, like if you're in a smoke screen or you're disengaging, like, you dump torpedoes from this side, and then as you turn around, then you turn around and dump torpedoes from this side. So I like to try to throw out as many torpedoes as possible when enemy ships are in range, or I think they're going to be sailing into my range. So for myself, I wanted to invest here finally into torpedoes. Now, this is where you could have well, let me finish. So I have that. Now I have an 18-point commander right now, 17 points of use, so 18, 19, 20, 21. So that means I have 4 points left once I reach a 21-point build. Right now, as of recording this, I'm looking at taking radiolocation I don't know if I've convinced myself of this yet, but this is something that I'm looking at. There's two reasons for this. One is it's nice to know where enemy ships are at, especially let's say you smoked up, you're shooting at cruisers and battleships, but you know there's a destroyer lingering around somewhere, and he's likely closer to you than the cruisers and battleships. Then knowing what direction that destroyer is, it helps me then angle myself in the smoke screen where I'm like, I'm either nose or bow in or stern in, facing where I think the enemy destroyer is, because smoke screens are torpedo magnets, so it's likely there's torpedoes on the way. So knowing where that enemy destroyer is at outside of the smoke screen helps me to be able to angle and adjust my ship in a position where I feel like I'm going to take no torpedoes, or maybe just one or two at the most, hopefully. A second reason for taking this is if you're moving in, maybe you haven't detected that enemy destroyer for a while, you have no idea where he is. Now you have an idea of where that destroyer could be, so you get your guns already fixed on that position. And also, if maybe you're on another side of an island, I guess this is a third reason, and you're trying to figure out where's the enemy ship going, maybe you're kind of chasing each other around an island, you can figure out where he's positioned at. A fourth reason I would recommend, or an option why you should take radio location. Let's say you build into that, I call it anti-concealment build, but you're just giving up other things, of course, for, like we said, if you gave up concealment systems concealment systems modification 1. Sorry, I'm just really excited. I'm talking too fast and I'm getting my words stuttered a bit. If you didn't take concealment and say you didn't take smokescreen, you took a radar instead, and so that blooms your concealment up from, let's say, 9.1 as is right now to something over 10. Having to know in mind where that destroyer could be, since he's detecting you, but your radar is not picking him up, will give you a little bit of a further edge there. So those are kind of 4 reasons that come to my mind of why you would want to take radio location for the Minotaur. Now, I kind of said I maybe haven't fully convinced myself of radio location yet. And that is because I've been thinking about the AA gunner. So my AA defense right now, continuous damage is 414, continuous damage by shell explosions is 1890. When I click on this bad boy, I go to 497 continuous damage and then 2,268 damage by shell explosions. But that's not all. Again, visiting your combat signals. You have the AA November Echo Set 7, where this also improves our continuous AA damage and damage from AA shell explosions. So if you look back to the right of the screen, so see what continuous damage and damage by shell explosions now. Click on this. Okay, we've got a buff. We went 414, 435, and then was that 1810, was it? 1890 to 1984. And then we go in and now we click on this guy. We have this. So 522 continuous damage and then 2,381. Now again, let's just compare this to my Des Moines. So I need to throw an AA signal on. I just got Halsey not too long ago, so I'm not too far along. So 398, 1764, 478, 2,117. So you actually already have better AA on the Minotaur than what you actually would have on Halsey or on something like the Des Moines. If we looked at the Worcester, throw an AA signal on. I'm just trying to do this for comparison for you guys is all. 485, 2,381. So actually, the AA is still even better than the Worcester. So you can be really trollish with your AA. I mean, the Worcester has 6.9. I think Des Moines is 5.8. Yeah. So I also got Des Moines not too long ago. So you can be really nasty in your Minotaur with AA. So you could build into an AA build. You also have this other AA, Expert AA Marksman. So this, your priority sector AA damage is increased by plus 25%, and then number of shell explosions in AA salvos is increased by plus 1. So yeah, so that's the second build I'm beginning to kind of get into, is if you didn't want to go for the traditional route, like this is what I'm at this moment in time planning to take on my Minotaur. If I decide, hey, I want more of an AA build, like if I don't really care to have RPF, if I feel like I have a good idea of where enemy ships could be, then I would lean towards AA gunner, and then maybe instead of taking fill the tubes to have faster torpedoes, I would drop that, and then I would go for Expert AA Marksman and get even more AA damage than what I already have right now and showing this. So it can be a nightmare with your AA for sure. So that kind of goes into one where I've said I'm between radio location, between AA gunner. The reason why I lean towards radio location is that you always get a benefit out of it for the most part. Where AA gunner, you're only going to get benefit out of it when there are enemy carriers in the game. But the route Wargaming has been taking the past several months, if we will, we're now getting battleship, what do you call them? Like the Issei, where it's a battleship, but it's also part aircraft carrier. That's a tier 6 ship. So, but I imagine only be a matter of time before Wargaming has a tier 10 battleship that's both battleship and carrier. So then you're going to be seeing even more. So instead of, let's say, seeing just only 2 aircraft carrier in matchmaking, you get 2.5 or maybe 3. I kind of say a half because a battleship / carrier isn't a full carrier, but you're going to be seeing more planes. And then if I also add in the fact that we have the Dutch cruisers now with their currently questionable damage and being able to stack the airstrikes on top of one another, then it might be another good reason to take AA gunner, because we're seeing more planes in World of Warships. I'm saying this just after the 10.4 patch has come out. So the Dutch cruisers are not in-game yet, besides testers. I haven't actually ran into too many at this point in time. But it could be a reason, well, hey, like there's just so many ships that have access to aircraft now that you want to take AA gunner. And then maybe you even fill the tubes and you take if I get it to show back up again, the Expert AA Marksman, right? And then when I was looking at the different upgrades, you guys kind of saw that there's also we have the AA guns modification, and then we also have here the auxiliary armaments modification 2, where, I mean, if you look at that, like continuous AA damage plus 15%, damage from AA shell explosions plus 15%. These numbers I have when I have the AA gunner skill selected are going to go even higher. So again, like you can make a really nasty AA build out of the Minotaur. Like nasty. If you're tired of planes bothering you and carriers bothering you. So yeah, so if you, right now, this is what I plan to take. This would be option A, I would say. Option B, I would say something like this. Option C, let's say you want to build more into the AA, fill the tubes, take Expert AA Marksman and AA Gunner. And you also have the consumables. You can do a lot of mix and match, if you will, because I feel like there's a lot of things you can do with the Minotaur. Yeah, that's what I would say would be my 3 main ideas for the Minotaur when it comes to the commander skills. So let's talk about the other skills. Why I don't take them or brought them up, Grease the gears, as I already showed, you have really fast turret traverse already, no need to take it. You have Swift Fish. This could, if you want to increase your torpedoes, you can. So you go 62 to 65 knots. I mean, you can, but again, I don't like to invest in torpedoes to that far extent. Just fill the tubes is what I feel more comfortable with. But it's an option you could take. Incoming fire alert. I have priority targets, so I already know to be aware of what's happening around me. And I really think that last stand is more important than incoming fire alert. You can see we have a considerable number of, was it 6 skills? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 skills that are not recommended in taking. We can still take them, but they're not recommended. Oh no, we can't take them. My bad. So that gives you even less options, commander skill wise, of what to take. We've talked about defense or expert AA marksman. Wargaming did buff the survivability expert from 10.0. I think it was in 10.4 they finally decided to buff it because they saw a lot of players weren't taking survivability expert for cruiser, and so this would mean 450 times 10. You get 4,500 additional HP to your Minotaur. So 47,800 instead of the 43,300 that we currently have. You also have enhanced torpedo explosive charge, so your torpedo damage is even more. So torpedo damage right now, does it show here? 16,767. We take this, we go to 19,282, which sort of reminds, you're getting up closer to Shimakaze. I think Shimakaze actually breaks 20,000 if I'm not mistaken. Oh wait, that's why I saw that skill selected. Yeah, you can take these skills that are X'd out, but I don't recommend it. I just still had Swiftfish selected, but I didn't realize that. But yeah, so you can take this, which means you're basically going full torpedo build at this point in time with a Minotaur. You could do it, but I think there's more you can do with Minotaur in my opinion. You have top grade gunner, so you get the permanent effect of your secondary battery reload time improved. We don't have secondary battery, so that's worthless. And then you have the can be activated, your main battery reload time being reduced by -8%. So that means something like going from, let's see, 2.8 seconds to like maybe 2.7, I don't think you want to get down to 2.6, but that's if you are, if there's an enemy ship, if there's a visible enemy ship within your ship's standard detectability range. So right now, for me, that's 9.1. So I am not going to get much of a use out of this with a concealment build Minotaur. You have outnumbered. If you're trying to activate this skill in the Minotaur, which has really bad armor, you've basically screwed and you've overextended yourself. To activate this skill, you have to be closer to more enemy ships within your firing range of your main battery versus allied ships, which often means you have to put yourself in a really dangerous situation to get the most out of this skill. Unless you're just on a flank by yourself and you have no ships with you, allies with you, then this skill would come more in handy, but it's only a can be activated skill, so you're not going to get the constant permanent benefit out of it like you can with something like the radiolocation, and then somewhat with the AA when there are planes in game. Okay, so I really need to wrap this video up now. We've talked for a reasonable amount of time now, but I hope you appreciated this video. Like I said, Minotaur is one of my more favorite ships right now in playing. I do have a video that I will throw up from, I think it was Wednesday, where I did almost 200,000 damage in the Minotaur with the current build, minus RPF of course. And then I had a game last night of almost 3,000 base XP and a victory in random battle. And that was 170,000 damage with almost 2,000 base XP. And that was super fun. But I'll have Wednesday's Minotaur video in the description if you want to go check that out to see this build in action as is. So I hope you really appreciated today's video. I'm sorry I kind of stuttered and talked probably a little bit too fast at certain points. Just really, I like this ship a lot, and I was really excited to talk about the Minotaur because there's so many different options in my mind that you can do between the upgrades, the consumables, and the commander skills for this ship. So if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. And if you have already subscribed, really appreciate it as we look to continue to grow the community here with you. So until next time, take care.